to their futures. Soldiers speak out.
Here at the Department of Veterans Affairs, one of our top 3 priorities is ending veterans' homelessness. A major cause of veterans' homelessness is what happens to veterans who become involved with our justice system. Assisting justice-involved veterans is crucial to ending veterans' homelessness. For years now, I've tried to reconcile 2 disparate images of veterans. The first image is the more familiar one for most Americans. Each year, roughly 60% of high school graduates in this country go on to some form of higher education. Much of the remaining 40% or so undergo vocational training or enter the workforce directly. Fewer others join the less than 1% of Americans who volunteer to safeguard our nation through service in uniform. After enlisting, these young volunteers undergo weeks of tough training to prepare them for a disciplined life of values, standards, and accountability. Upon arrival at their first units, they quickly become trusted members of high-performing teams, tough, well-led, highly disciplined, and extremely motivated. They go forward every day to perform complex, difficult, and dangerous missions, all without fanfare or complaint. As a group, they are simply outstanding young people, among the best this country has to offer. This is their collective narrative. But there is a second image, a smaller group of veterans who enter a downward spiral that often includes depression, among other mental health issues such as PTSD and TBI, substance abuse, failed relationships, joblessness, which can descend into homelessness and sometimes suicide. There is no difference in how these 2 groups started out, but how they finish is starkly different. So this is not about them. This is about us. Tens of thousands of veterans are released from prison each year, and thousands more enter into or end up being supervised by the justice system. If we are to end veterans' homelessness, we must disrupt the cycles that have come to dominate the lives of justice-involved veterans. To ensure they have the best chance to succeed, our department is intent on identifying and assisting them. This includes ensuring that those who are eligible have full access to the broad range of benefits and services they have earned, including our several residential treatment programs. We want to evoke the discipline, pride, and camaraderie that they learned and lived in uniform to rebuild their futures. VA cannot do this alone. Our partners throughout the justice system, community providers, and fellow veterans who have skills, knowledge, and attributes to effect rescues can and must help. Service members have lived a code that promised never to leave a fallen comrade. So today I seek your assistance, your collaboration, your counsel, and your support in a cooperative effort to ensure we never leave behind justice-involved veterans who have the potential to change their futures.
General Eric Shinseki, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, just stated that service members have lived a code that promised to never leave a fallen comrade. And he encouraged us to have a cooperative effort to never leave behind justice-involved veterans. Hello, my name is Dr. Dennis Mills. I'm an accredited independent VA claims agent and a founding member for Veterans for Peace, Chapter 109. Today we have 4 dedicated individuals who are also committed to never leaving behind justice-involved veterans. And I want to welcome Judge Brett Buckley, who is with the Thurston County Veterans Court. Welcome. And Sheriff John Snezzer, our Thurston County Sheriff's Office. Welcome. Thank you. And then Travis Sayers, who's a program specialist with the Washington Department of Veterans Affairs. Welcome, Travis. And finally, Linda Loyal, who's the program manager for the Veterans Assistance Fund. And all these individuals are dedicated to helping veterans. And particularly tonight we're going to talk about justice-involved veterans. Justice-involved veterans. Now that's a strange term that you don't always hear all the time. And I suggest that maybe we could just, you know, the cameras are going to be basically eavesdropping our conversation. So what on earth are we talking about when we say justice-involved veterans?
Well, I'll start off.
Okay.
They're veterans who are sitting in front of me having been charged with the crime, and we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with their particular case. And usually I know about it because Travis has told us that they have some connection to the military in one fashion or the other.
So you say that Travis has told you something because he gets involved from the Washington Departments of Veterans Affairs. Travis, how do you get involved in this then?
Well, I visit the county jail on Monday mornings, and then through the cooperation of the jail and everything, I have access to a report that lets me know what veterans are, who claim veteran status and who is in the jail, and then I go visit them and do assessments on them.
So once they're incarcerated, they've seen the sheriff's in action because they're in your facility, John?
What it initially starts from a contact from law enforcement. In this case, it's Thurston County Sheriff's Office, and part of our intake procedure when they're being booked into the facility is they're asked certain questions about pertaining to whether or not they are a veteran, whether they're currently serving or have served. And we go into how if they've been discharged with honorable, general, medical. So we have prepared a way of asking questions so that when Travis does come in, he's able to have a lot more knowledge about that person and can ask him particular questions that might be able to assist him in his evaluations and how we can proceed from that point on.
So you've determined the character of their discharge and what it is that you can or cannot do, and then Travis can pick it up knowing that you deal with honorable discharges, general under honorable conditions, less than honorable?
Well, I'll go see the veteran regardless, because there might be something, not necessarily the IVERS program. I'm still a benefit specialist, so regardless, but there are certain crimes that I am not by contract, as far as my contract that I participate in services with, and that would be sex offense, arson, or violent crimes against an individual. And how I would deem violent crime against an individual would be if there was a weapon involved or the victim ended up going to the hospital. That's sort of what boundaries would fall in.
Okay.
So let me take a step back, Dennis. This issue you raised is a really important one because identifying those folks who are justice-involved veterans is crucial to us being able to serve them. It's crucial for Linda and Travis for their programs to be able to kick in, and for us in the courts to be able to respond to it. So John's folks do a great job of providing the database which would allow us to identify these folks. And I know this because we were the first county in the state to have a veterans court, and it surprised me because we're not the largest county in the state. Clearly we won't have the highest number of veterans, yet a county like King County did not have a veterans court. And one of the questions I asked when I started talking to the folks up there was, why not? And they said, well, we don't think we have very many veterans. And I said, well,
In King County.
In King County, exactly. And I said, you know, how can that be? And they said, well, you're next to Fort Lewis, you have all the veterans. I said, well, we have probably proportionally more than you might think, but King County is going to have way more veterans than we do. And you have the need for a veterans court up here. And their problem was they couldn't identify them in the jail. They didn't know who in their jail were veterans. And it was one, because the jail wasn't providing the detailed questionnaires for booking that John's folks do. And then they didn't have somebody assertive like Travis going down there and helping weed these folks out. And as we were talking about earlier, sometimes they're reluctant to admit their status because they don't want to see the connection. But Travis does a great job of talking to them and letting them know the benefits of asserting that. So I think in Thurston County, the combination of these resources has really helped us to identify a significant population in the jail that we have services available to help.
Did all of the various different agencies sit down together one time and say, we have a problem that we can cooperatively solve together? What can we do together?
I think we approached Linda about doing this and the jail, and it took a few months because they do have something like this similar in Pierce County that WDVA provides services to, and in King County as far as our incarcerated veteran services. But the whole jail thing, that was just something totally new and exciting, really.
So, John, you developed this whole thing of what do we need to ask of the veterans so that we can get the appropriate services?
Well, we kind of looked at what would help Travis make good decisions on what can benefit them. One of the things we haven't talked about is that we also work with the prosecutor's office.
Okay.
Because there's, like Travis mentioned earlier, there are certain crimes that really wouldn't fit in originally, but once you start working through it, we're sometimes able to look at that case and say, is this crime really fit what this person deserves, or is there a better way that we can help them out because of maybe their issues, because of their military career?
What they've experienced.
So what they've experienced. So Travis gets to, even though he has to make a decision, he also gets to revisit sometimes the people that we might have passed over in the beginning and get that. That's why we're able to provide the information. So he gets to make informative decisions. And then if we come up and say, or a prosecutor says, hey, we think this person would be good for this, and this is why. And if we can look at the charges, and the prosecutor's office obviously works with the judge and works with the sheriff's office and Travis's and Linda's group to, I mean, it's all of us really wanting to make this happen.
And the other part too, I mean, pretrial services, they'll send me emails. If I miss a veteran or something, they'll send me emails. It's just, and I've even gotten from Deputy Sleece, we've gotten emails. I took a veteran into custody last night. Maybe you could visit him. So it's just everybody talking.
You mentioned pre-trial services. What does that involve?
Well, they go down and screen they screen all individuals in pretrial services, I guess, for their verification of their address, if they had a release address, and just get a little bit of background on them. So they might identify themselves as a veteran to them, and they might not have identified themselves at booking. So, I mean, it's sort of a checks and balances through there.
It also depends on how they come into our facility.
Yeah.
So that has certain, whether they're at that point in time really wanting to divulge that information, or maybe being secretive about it, or under the influence of something. So that's how they get it. And I have to say the easiest part for the sheriff's office is that when you have motivated people, it makes our job easier. Just like it helps the judge, Judge Buckley, make good decisions. And when you have all these people who really want to help these individuals.
So, Dennis, let me interrupt for a moment, go back to your original question, which is, was there some sort of concerted effort to try to piece all this together? And I would say the answer to that is no. What we had was a bunch of well-intentioned people trying to do what they can to work with an issue that was important, which is we have a bunch of folks who, and an increasing number of bunch of folks who are finding themselves in custody, and they have a connection to the military, and based on what General Shinseki said, that it's the philosophy that we don't leave any of these folks behind, to start figuring out what, on an individual basis, we could do for these folks. So the county created Linda's program to help with veterans and their needs. Travis was sent in by the Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs. John opened up his facility where he didn't have to, but he started collecting the data that enabled those programs to start to work. And once that population was identified, then it sort of created this, made apparent the need, and a couple of folks came to me and said, hey, we could start a veterans court here. And we did. So it wasn't the overall plan of let's get this started and then we had to staff it and do all these committees and make it happen. It didn't happen that way at all. It happened because a few folks took individual initiative, started doing their bit to try to help these folks, and then it just created its own momentum.
Now, I don't want our viewing audience to think because there's 4 men and 1 woman that we're going to out-person you, Linda. So I want to drop the ball in your court and saying, how did you ever get involved with all these caring individuals here that have a variety of programs?
Well, like Travis said, the Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs communicated with us and talked about the need to serve veterans and the successes that could bring to those individuals that are incarcerated, the veterans that are incarcerated. And so we used a model from Pierce County, and you know, Thurston County really felt very committed to serving this group, and so we got together and put the program in place like they've described, and it's been very successful.
Now, you are in charge of the Veterans Assistance Program, and a lot of people think Veterans Assistance, oh, that's where I go when I'm out of money and I'm trying to find money to pay for rent or whatnot. Why don't you expand a little bit more when you say what are these assistance programs? Because we are talking about well, we're talking about veterans that are in the justice system now and how we're going to deal with them, but they often don't think about how comprehensive your program is.
Before she answers that, just to let you know that when you say victims, in some sense of the way, they really are.
Yeah.
Because of their exposure.
Well, that's true. And I often tell the veterans, John, that we're all victims of war.
Absolutely.
And some of these young people get exposed to things that they should never be exposed to and carry that, either hidden wounds or physical wounds. And that affects sometimes how they react in our society.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that out.
Well, the primary function of the program is to do what you brought up, is to assist veterans or their family members who are really in need of financial support. And that's usually in the form of rent or mortgage, utilities, food, transportation for the transit system, those kinds of basic needs. And in addition to that, the program also provides funding for Travis's time in the jail, and we also cover beds in shelters for veterans, working and focusing on the homeless veteran. And what occurs sometimes is a veteran comes out of the jail system, and our program is able to help them maybe with that beginning month's rent.
So or transition from the incarceration period to...
Or the shelter, cost,
okay.
And working with them then to have successful outcomes.
And what is the character of their DD-214s, their discharge, that you're able to provide the services?
We, in Thurston County, we accept honorable discharge and general under honorable conditions.
General under honorable,
yes.
okay.
And the key point, and I want to really give Drexel House a shout out here for the shelter.
Please
because
do.
They, and Linda has 3 beds there that she provides for veterans there. And then the American Legion has picked up another one of the beds. So we have 4 out of the 16 beds at the Drexel House that are dedicated to veterans. So when we do get that person that has, there might be a DV, a domestic violence situation where they don't have family or anything around here. They have nowhere to go when we do get them out and start them into treatment and everything. They have nowhere to go. And the Drexel House, they'll go in and do an assessment for them and see if they're good for the Drexel House, and then we can just release them to the Drexel House. And they provide transportation up to the VA so they can get treatment and stuff like that. So they're a great partner in all this too.
Very much so.
Before we started taping, I raised an issue. I was privileged to go to the graduation of the Veterans Court, and that was a very moving experience, not only to watch the individual who was graduating, and yourself, Judge, because I can tell that you were emotionally involved as well, and just seeing the progress that this person made over a 3-year period, although it's a 2-year program normally. But also, I love watching people, and I was watching relatives, and I was watching people who are involved in the system, and this person was becoming a role model. That person had dependency issues and had gone through treatment programs. What are we doing for veterans that they really are not classified as having dependency issues, but they are having clearly PTSD or traumatic brain injury residuals affecting their behavior, which led to becoming justice involved? So I'm going to throw that out to the group because it is a tough situation, and I'll say this because I'm an accredited independent VA claims agent, that I'm seeing people come to me before they get into any treatment system or benefit system that they're showing all the indications that they have PTSD, and some that they have had traumatic brain injuries as a result of injuries that they've gone through. And if these people get into some situation where then the sheriff would say, well, now they're incarcerated for what they did, how do we help these people that they're not exhibiting, sending them off to chemical dependency courses, but they truly are having issues with mental health?
Well, I'll start. Everybody who comes into Veterans Court has a diagnosed mental illness.
And who diagnoses that?
It could be however they get it. It could be the Veterans Administration. It could be from a local contracted evaluator. It could be from the jail mental health staff. However they come to it, it could have been while they were on active duty, before they were separated. As long as we have medical documentation of the diagnosis, they then become potentially eligible for the program. If subsequently admitted, the most important thing that's going to happen is we're going to insist on their treatment of that condition.
Yes.
And missing it in this group is a key player in this whole system, and that is the Veterans Administration. The Veterans Administration has dedicated a staff person from each VA center called a Veterans Justice Outreach Coordinator, and we've been very lucky to have a great one from Seattle. He comes down and he participates in our system. He's now moved up to help the King County Court, which was subsequently created, and we now have a more local Veterans Outreach Coordinator from the VA. But we get those folks immediately in touch with the providers at the VA and start making available the resources to enable the veteran to go up and access those treatment. And then we follow them through. I mean, that's a discussion we have every single time they come to court, is how are you doing with this treatment? You know, how are you doing with your counselor? Have you seen a doctor about the medical issues related to past brain injury? All those sorts of things.
And I think the one thing that I do a report on Monday when I get out of the jail, who I've seen and all that other stuff, and I forward that to the VJO up at the VA, and we might even talk a little bit and coordinate her coming in to do an assessment if they haven't had a diagnosis, a solid diagnosis yet.
Is that at the Seattle regional office?
No, at the
Or
American Lake. We have
Okay.
American Lake. Randy Turner is
Oh,
our,
yes. Outstanding person.
Yes.
Yeah.
worked with Randy for a few years.
And this is an example of one of the great things about running a Veterans Court is to watch the variety of resources brought to bear that we don't have in other justice-related issues. It's really been rewarding to see all these agencies work together. Travis represents, or is a representative of the State Department of Veterans Affairs. And, you know, we all imagine that or hear about issues of conflict between state and federal agencies. Well, here the Veterans Administration, the federal agency, and the state administration, the WDVA.
And the county.
And the county.
And the county.
All work really well together. And I don't sense anybody trying to protect turf. I don't sense anybody trying to hoard resources. I see them all willing to share their resources and their talents and trying to help these folks.
I think that they also have a common goal, is to provide whatever resources they can to help that particular individual out. One of the things that the judge doesn't really talk about is that he ensures that they hold themselves accountable. And he is a stickler about that. And to be successful in that program it's not an easy task. So Travis or Linda or the judge, they're ensuring that these people are staying on task, are following through on their appointments, and they're being held accountable for their actions.
Well, and I want to our viewing audience to note that our judge is also a veteran, a JAG officer, so things aren't going to slide by you that perhaps one of your colleagues might miss, because it probably helps that you've had that experience and background.
Well, having prosecuted and defended soldiers at various times during my military career, I do have some sense of how they may be thinking.
Linda, when did you become involved? Because the Veterans Court started in 2009, I believe.
That's right. And so in 2008, we began work on it, and I was involved at that stage.
And what type of people or charges do you see with people? Or do you get all of them, or do you specialize more in one thing than another?
I'll
Travis
speak
can
to
speak.
that. It's a mix. I mean, it's almost like a 50-50 what I see down there. It's either chemical dependency or domestic violence, and usually there's some mental health issue that's that ties all this together. And the biggest thing is just there's so many resources out there, and they're not knowledgeable about the resources.
Well, and I understand that Washington Department of Veterans Affairs is a fairly large organization that has a variety of services. Who do you go to within your own organization to rely upon to get the sources that you need to draw upon?
Well, we have WDVA, Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs. We have contracted PTSD counselors in each county of the state. And the local one we have here, would it be okay to mention his name?
Please do.
Okay, Keith Meyer. They all praise Keith Meyer.
Yes, I've heard his name praised from.
There you go.
Yes,
and
on high.
and he's wonderful. He's a WDVA contracted PTSD counselor with us. And when Keith got a little bit overran, we tapped into Mason County. Casper's up there. And Casper was more than willing to come down and help out and everything. So the PTSD program that we have has been a great resource.
So do you get veterans who are not justice involved yet but have PTSD issues who would come to you then?
Oh yeah, and see that's the thing is not, some of them get out because I only come in on the Mondays, so some of them might release before then, and then their lawyer will direct them to come see me or make contact with me, or even I've had other veterans say, hey, you need to call this guy. So.
Okay. Let me throw out a very challenging question that I'd like a variety of responses. You get a veteran who clearly has PTSD, perhaps has residuals from traumatic brain injury, is married, comes home a very different person, and then gets into altercations often with a spouse, and then reacts physically, which we would then classify as domestic violence. They get charged with that. John, you see them, incarcerate them, then they go through the system where they have to get a defense lawyer or whatever the case might be. But often the cases, the spouse will get a restraining order. Now, here's the problematic issue that I want to bring out. The person with PTSD has very few support services available to help them. When they are not able then to have contact with family because of their issue, that has removed one of the support legs that they often have. What do we do then to provide, in essence, support for them because they have this restraining order because of their domestic violence? Is that a fair question?
Well, I don't know. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know where I'm coming
Yeah, I know
from.
where you're coming
Okay.
from. So that type of individual, they normally would come see me, and then we tie them into those support. They contact me usually once to twice a week, check in. I'm there to call if they are running into hiccups or anything. But it's just staying in contact. And like I said, usually if I can get them into the Drexel House, there's there's at least 3 other veterans that's going to be there as a support. And then the job they do at Drexel House with the case management and supportive services is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem occurs because me or some other judge has ordered them not to have contact
Yes.
as an initial pretrial condition in this case, which is routine in domestic violence, and it's
And it's understandable,
and
too.
it's understandable, and it's the smart thing to do. The first issue you have to deal with these folks is what Travis just touched on, which is housing. So what we've said, you can't go home. Where do they go? Well, they're no longer on active duty, so we can't say you're confined to the barracks. That's not going to happen.
That's right.
So they're out on their own, and we don't want them living in the woods. We don't want them just roaming around. So luckily, we have the resources here. Linda's program and Travis's program are really great in helping us find housing and shelter for these folks. That's the first thing. We have to get them in some sort of stable position. If they are involved with Veterans Court, then in essence, we replace their family contact with becoming their alternative family. On a regular basis, they're going to see their defense counsel. They're going to see a prosecutor who isn't the typical prosecutor. In fact, is somebody who takes a totally different role in that environment. They're going to see their social worker who is working with them in the context of Veterans Court. They are going to see Travis. They're going to see the representative from the Veterans Administration. Every time they come to court, they're going to see those people. And those people are all there just asking them, what can we do? How you doing? Just trying to, give them a tie to something.
Dennis, did you get that feel? I want to go back to the graduation. Did you get that feel of family when you were in there?
Oh, very much so.
And that's what the judge is talking
very
about.
Much
that
so.
support.
And then you list at least 5 individuals that become involved, and that's what I was hoping to hear, because today the veterans come home and the unit that they were with, they're gone, so they don't relate to anyone else other than sometimes veterans. They often don't relate to their significant others in their life either because of the experiences they've gone through. And so I'm pleased to hear that there's this that takes place.
Well, John, sorry to keep interrupting you. I just had a letter the other day from a veteran in our court, and Travis, you haven't seen this letter yet. It's remarkable. It's about somebody who fell into the situation you're talking about. We said he couldn't go home, and he wasn't able to for a while. Eventually, because he was successful in doing a bunch of the things that we were asking him to do, he was allowed to go home. And we got a letter from his family. Various members of his family each took the time to write us a letter and said that this person came back totally changed.
A different person.
A different person. For all the reasons of the work that they had put into the various things that they had been asked to do. But they came back a better husband, a better father than they were when they got out of the service and had come back from deployment. And in some regards, they feel like they were better than even before they went on deployment, that they have gained some skills which allowed them to sort of reflect on who they were in that context, and they are even better. So, I think we can do things to help folks in that situation.
So in this case, becoming justice involved was probably the best thing for them.
Isn't that ironic to say that?
Yes.
It's funny you bring that up, because I worked with an individual. He wasn't part of the Veterans Court, but he was part of the IVERS program. I did a release plan on him in May, and he's called me, I don't know, about every other week, and he just says, I was so happy I went to jail. And so what we did the release plan, got him in the Drexel House, enrolled him for VA health care. He didn't know that he was eligible for that. He's got a VASH, Section 8 VA subsidized housing voucher now. He enrolled for the VRAP program, of the new educational program, and he starts school in the winter quarter. And that's all he says is, I'm so happy I went to jail.
These things would have never happened otherwise.
Right.
Just before you start, the other part that a lot of people don't get is we're right next to Joint Base Lewis McChord. And so we also have other veterans who are either retired or hearing about what we're doing for drug court and or veterans court, and also who are active duty. And so they're also, starting to pick up on this and want to help their comrades out.
You don't want to leave them behind either.
You're right. And I mean, it's kind of interesting how you say you don't want to leave anybody behind, because you're starting to see more people acknowledge that something did happen to them and that they do need help, and that their friends or comrades, whether they served with them or not, are actually starting to come out of the, I don't want to say woodwork, but actually really wanting to help out.
Well, we're seeing people now, even in the area of securing veterans' benefits, that they thought they were okay for 30 years. And then the present wars that we're in triggered untreated problems that they've had. And so we're seeing now Vietnam-era veterans that are coming and saying, I need help, or I've been injured and I need services. We're going to see more veterans coming through the system, coming out. You have about 30-some graduates now or so in just the short period of time we've been in since 2009. What is capacity?
Veterans Court is an adjunct of our county mental health court, and we have a total capacity for the two courts of 55 defendants at any one time. And there's no split between the two of them. It's just how many people we have in one court and how many people we have in the other court, and it constantly changes as people come and go. I think right now we have 19 people in Veterans Court. Sometimes that number's a little higher, sometimes it's a little lower. But we concentrate on trying to make sure we provide quality service. We're not about just trying to be as big as we can, because we think that will water down what we can do for these folks, and it's really important that we really work successfully with the folks who are in there. Only about anywhere from 16 to 20% of the people who are otherwise eligible get into the court as we go through the process of figuring out who's going to come in. And they may be not get in for a variety of reasons, but there's a large need out there. We're not serving the huge large need, but the people who do come in, I think we're serving really well.
What would be the factors that would eliminate me from getting into the Veterans Court, where clearly I've done something that caught the attention of the sheriff and I'm incarcerated, and now he finds out that, gee, I have an honorable discharge. What am I going to have to do to get into your program?
Well, you're not going to have to do anything. We're going to evaluate the information that we have concerning you, and what we're going to be looking at are a variety of things. One is your veteran status. Make sure that you are a veteran and eligible for services, that you have at least a general discharge. We're going to be looking at that you have a mental health diagnosis.
Okay.
And then, importantly, we are going to look to see that there's a connection between that diagnosis and the commission of the offense.
Aha.
Because that's really important to have that nexus, because what we are offering the community is to say, if we can help these folks deal with their mental health problem, then we can tell you that there's less likelihood that they will commit crimes in the future, because it appears to us that it was this mental health condition that contributed to the commission of the offense in the first place. And then for Veterans Court, we say that not only do they have this nexus, but the mental health diagnosis has to have a connection to their military service. So if they had a mental health problem prior to entering into the military service, that may exclude them from coming into the court, because we have others who, as some of the conversation you've had, saw things that we wouldn't ask any normal human to have to observe, and that's where they had the PTSD, or they were exposed to explosions which cause traumatic brain injury and have them in the situation they are. Those are all important factors. They have to want to do it. That's a really important factor. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to, and they're not going to come in, because we're going to ask them to do a lot and they have to be motivated. And then finally, the prosecutor has veto power. If the prosecutor says, no, this case is too risky, or for whatever reason, we don't want this case coming into Veterans Court, then that's the end of the conversation. They don't come in. But typically, the prosecutor frequently refers people. So we're not talking about people who aren't working together here.
I've been charged with a crime. I get involved in the Veterans Court. What are the benefits for me? Will my crime somehow get erased? Will I be able to have the charges dropped? Will I not have to do jail time? I'm sort of trying to throw these questions out so that our viewing audience today will say, well, these are the benefits of Veterans Court.
Yes, yes, yes. All of those. The biggest benefit to the individual is that we're going to have this environment that you were discussing earlier where we can sort of step in and create some bonds with this person that they may not have for whatever reason at this point in time, because they have separated from the Army out here and the rest of their family is down south or back east, or they've been ordered by a judge not to have contact with their family. We are going to have personal relationships with them, so I think in some sense that's going to create some stability in their life. We're going to insist that they address issues that have them in the system in the first place. So hopefully they will learn from the various programs that they are in and develop some tools to keep from being in that situation again. And if they are successful at the end of 2 years and they graduate, then one of two things is going to happen. The charge is going to be dismissed.
Which I observed on Wednesday, the graduation, the charges changed.
Well, you observed two options. One of the charges was dismissed,
yes,
and that was the agreement on that charge. And on
yes,
the other charge, the agreement coming into the court was that the charge would be amended from a more serious offense to a lesser offense, and a
yes,
conviction entered on that.
Yes.
So it's totally up to the prosecutor how they want to fashion the resolution. Sometimes they'll say the conviction will stand, but we'll suspend all the jail time. Sometimes they'll recommend that the charge be dismissed, and that's the most frequent. Or sometimes they'll talk about a reduction in the charge. So a variety of things can happen, all of them inure to the benefit of the defendant who is in there, who typically comes in based on their criminal justice background facing fairly lengthy jail time. And that's one of the things that is really important for John's folks who run the jail, is that this is a way that we can take some of the folks who otherwise might be down there using up the beds that John has and put them in a more productive program and allow those beds in the jail for people who might not otherwise be able to access those.
Since you're on that, I mean, since we've started this collaboration with WDVA and Thurston County Assistance Fund, we've saved the county over $650,000 in bed days.
I was going to bring that up with the amount saved. How do we determine what is saved? What's the benefit for our viewing people saying, my taxes pay for all these things type thing? How do we determine what's been saved?
First off, just kind of going back to the graduation that you saw on Wednesday, that individual, what the judge was talking about, who had a more serious crime and it got reduced, it happened because of Travis working with the prosecutor's office and saying looking at how this incident occurred and what we can do to make it better, or is this person, can we get them on the program? And that's what's good about having people that you can look at and who you're dealing with, you're not just calling somebody on the phone and you don't really know who they are. So that's what's really great about this. But when you're looking at bed space and you talk about people, I mean, Travis is talking about 600,000. To be honest with you, I think it's a lot more, because you're taking, like the judge says, you're taking 30 plus people who graduated, who would have spent between 90 and 365 days incarcerated in my jail. Okay? And so beds cost me money because of personnel.
Yes.
And so, but the other part that really I think is really awesome is that the recidivism is so much lower that their contribution back to society is threefold. So we're saving way more than the 600. I mean,
Yeah.
we're saving millions of dollars. I mean, it sounds kind of unique to say that, but you really are saving money because we really are making an influx.
They're not
We're
going to be
changing
back
their
to
lives.
see you
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Well, the judge hopes so.
And
How
we-
much recidivism do you see on normal? Not just veterans, but just people that seem to be
well-
coming back again and again.
You know, it's interesting you say that because recidivism that we see just on a, you know, it's probably as high as 30+%. But once they go through like a court like this, it's way lower. I think it's like 12% or even lower.
It's even lower than that.
Even lower than that. Yeah.
Single digit right
Yeah.
now. I mean, you know, it's anecdotal evidence because we've only been in business for 3 years. So, you know, any statistics professor would say, yeah, let's be careful about what we're judging from this. But I can tell you that right now the statistics show we're getting a great return for this investment by the citizens of Thurston County. And these programs are funded, at least in the court side, solely through the treatment sales tax that the commissioners have authorized. Totally funds Veterans Court, with the exception of the services that come from Travis and from the VA, where those folks are paid by their own agencies. But
well, mine are paid by the county.
Yeah.
basically.
By the county.
And that
Right.
comes from the property tax.
Property tax.
Right.
What is the most beneficial thing to the community about having a veterans court? Since we're only in business 3 years, what would each of you say about what's the most beneficial thing about having veterans court?
For me, actually, even being a veteran and knowing that at least I can do my part to help, whatever I can do to help the judge and contribute back to our community. And I know that if you ever go to a graduation, you see that sense of wanting to give back
Yes.
to the community. And I know that those people who have graduated have already become volunteers in any way they can. And when you talk about being a better parent, you're talking about now that person can go out and coach their children or other children in sports, or you're seeing a lot more. In only my personal experience in meeting with some of the people that have gone through the program, they give a lot more volunteer hours back to the community. And just that alone makes me personally proud of that we're able to do it. The giving back to the community. And if anybody ever goes to graduation, you really see that.
I wished I had a camera with me. I'm thinking, oh, I missed a Kodak moment. I mean, that was something, you know, and it wasn't so much even just zeroing in on you as the judge who's seen a successful outcome, but watching the people that were in the crowd that were there for that person. I thought that's something that should be seen by our entire community to better understand that this is something to be prized. Anyone else that want to share as the most beneficial thing to the community of having a veterans court?
Well, I'll jump in and I'll say two things. One is that my sense is that the crimes we have these folks in court for are, in a sense, precursors. They are signs to us that we should be aware of what's going on in this person's life, because if we can catch them on their DUI or their drug-related crime or their domestic violence crime, maybe we're catching them before they hole themselves up in their apartment and start becoming a sniper. Maybe, you know, we get them before their life is so totally fallen apart that they have nothing left to do but react in the way that they've been trained. So my sense is if we can get in early like that, we can keep that from happening. So if we are in fact keeping that from happening, and there's no way to know that, we are really benefiting the community.
Yes.
And then the second thing I would say is that we as a community should feel a great sense of pride that there's this willingness in this community to look at alternative ways of dealing with these issues. You know, the typical criminal justice approach is, did you commit a crime? If the answer through our system is yes, then we punish you. And that's just the typical way we have of dealing with it. And, you know, it makes sense in a lot of ways, but there can be different ways and better ways of doing it. And this is one of those better ways. And this county constantly supports looking at better ways of doing it.
That's encouraging to hear.
I think, and the question was, what do I take out of the Veterans Court?
And the most beneficial thing that you see?
Just, I enjoy what I see. What I enjoy in doing this job with this court and stuff is just to see their growth and that aha moment when they're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that, or with their benefits or something like that, or they have those reflective essays that they aren't even assigned to do, but they do them anyway, and they come in there and share them with us in the court and everything. And I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff that goes on in there. And I think Kim made the comment, our recent graduate, she said, of all the things that I've been awarded, I wasn't there, Judge, so can you quote her for me?
Well, she said this is the thing of which she is most proud and is most meaningful to her is her graduation from mental health court, and this is from somebody who served as a drill sergeant.
And held up the certificate.
That's right. And to her, and mostly to her family, if you notice, Dennis.
Yes.
She looked at her family and said, "See, you got your mom back, and I'm a different person."
And
than
held
you,
that to
you
the
knew for a long time."
grandchild, too.
That's right.
Yeah, it was becoming a role model. Yes.
It was a great moment of pride for her.
And I was just going to comment on the, I think the benefit that I see so much with the ones we've been working with is the opportunity they've taken and the changes this has brought to their lives. So I think that is what I see as the strongest benefit.
Do you see, Linda, veterans before they become in trouble with the legal system?
Mm-hmm.
And do bells sort of go off like, here's a potential thing unless something happens?
Not necessarily, but sometimes, yes. Yes, very much so.
On a typical day, what do you see happening for veterans that are seeking assistance from the funds that you have responsibility for?
A typical day would be talking to various veterans or family members on the telephone, looking at how we might be able to help them in the program, having them come into the office, providing them assistance, referring them to resources, making contacts that will be helpful to them, and then in many cases a follow-up with them. Many times we work with veterans over a period of time in the year, so we see a progression, and hopefully the assistance is, providing some support that will make a difference in their living situation.
And I feel really comfortable in saying that the work Linda does with these folks who haven't yet been identified as involved in the criminal justice system keeps a number of them from becoming involved in criminal justice. If she can keep them in a home, if she can give them the resource they need to pay that one bill that was just really starting to create some stress, that's just going to reduce the likelihood that they're going to respond in an inappropriate way that has them come in contact with John's folks and then with Travis.
I think that she's really simplified her job because there's a lot of emotions going on when they go see her. A lot of pain, a lot of things going on in their lives, and kind of desperate. And I don't want to go always into desperation, but I know that she experiences a lot.
Very much, yes.
We're down to our, believe it or not, last minute, and I knew this was going to happen. So let's take about 10 or 15 seconds each to sort of give your one shot as far as this whole theme that we've had of justice-involved veterans. And I'll start it back with Linda.
Well, I would like the viewing audience to know, especially veterans out there that think that the Veterans Assistance Fund might be able to help them out, I would like them to give us a call. And I know you're going to put the contact information.
Indeed we will.
Great. And the program, there's also great volunteer opportunities. We really encourage volunteers. So anyone out there that would be interested in helping out with the program in some ways, please give us a call also.
I'll do that. Thank you. Travis?
I just think Thurston County needs to be proud of this program that we have here, because we get calls from all over. I've gotten calls from all over the United States about our court and our programs that we have in there, in the jail, and I just think that the people of Thurston County should be really proud.
Thank you. Sheriff?
I would say that we're very committed to serving the citizens of Thurston County, and being able to provide this is a great opportunity to give back what they gave us.
Thank you. Judge?
And I'll echo what John says and sort of put a different spin on what General Shinseki said, where the goal here is to leave no veteran behind. We also say that what we're trying to do is serve those who have served us. And I think it's an obligation that we as a community have, and this community has stepped up to do that.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank all of you for participating in our theme tonight and for the service that you provide. And we trust that our viewing audience will benefit from the discussion that you've heard tonight.
Soldiers, speak out. We can tell the truth of what we've seen. We are not liars. Soldiers, speak out. We have a duty to all children and to their futures.